Step onto the field. I'm Patrick Dangerfield.
And I'm Josh Jenkins. Pat, welcome. A premiership 1 week and a little brand new filly the next. Well, you probably don't know what a filly is. A new baby girl the next. Congratulations from everyone at the field. Just talk us through. Now we know how it all transpired, but just talk us through the week. Kept it on the down low.
Kept it on the down low. It's been a big week, Josh. We're recording roughly 8:45 Sunday night, and it's perfect because I'm going to be up for the next 6 hours anyway. So this can be a 6-hour podcast, and it won't affect my sleep whatsoever because for some reason babies are born nocturnal. So that's been fun. Mards and I haven't been too bad in terms of each other's throats. But, little Winifred. So she was 2.7 kilos, 6.2 pounds on the old scale.
Oh, that's
and
small.
Mum was a star. What can I say? I did bugger all and she did everything.
2.6 kilos. Is that quite small?
It is. It is. She came a little bit early because her what's the umbilical cord? The cord just wasn't getting enough sort of juice, so they decided to call it early. Otherwise, she sort of would have been. I think she was a week early. Even though sort of full term's 38, but all's well. She's a tiny little dot. Kids love her. Good luck to her because. Good Lord, she's been whacked over the head already, and she's a week's age. So, but it's been good fun.
Yeah, well, I know Flick well, and Flick by name, Flick by nature, she is going to give that child hell.
Yep.
2.6 kilos, and you think she's small. My twins were 1.6 and 1.4 kilos.
How prem were they, the girls, when they were born?
30 weeks they were. 30 weeks.
30 weeks, yeah.
So 8 to 10 weeks early. So they were. I just used to grab them like tennis balls and just juggle them around. Well done, little Winifred. Nickname? Is it Winnie?
Winnie.
What about Freddie? No.
Well, Flick started. My daughter, has started to calling her Pooh. Because when I said Winnie the Pooh, she thought it was the funniest thing she's ever heard because my kids actually haven't watched Winnie the Pooh. So she thought it was hilarious. So she goes around, she calls her Pooh and then just goes, and then runs off. So, we will go with Winnie until someone starts calling her Freddie, and then I'm sure someone will call her something else entirely. And it's a bit like footy clubs. You do not pick your nickname at a footy club.
No, that's true. That's true. You do certainly. Now, of course, we're an audio podcast, but we're a video podcast because we are taking YouTube by storm, Pat. Make sure you subscribe on our...
Actually, Josh, that, if you do subscribe over the next week, and all for subscribers already as well, but if you subscribe over the next week, we are giving away a signed Geelong... Josh is not signing it, so I'll make that clear.
There it is.
A signed Geelong Cats Guernsey.
It won't be this one because this one's mine and you don't want mine. So it'll be one just like it. It just won't have the number 11. Now, if you are listening to this, everything we're saying seems a little weird, but if you're watching it, you can see the jumper. So there is a jumper similar to the one that we'll be giving away randomly to someone, who has either signed up and subscribed or subscribes over the next 7 days. So get involved. YouTube's the way to go, Pat. I thought it was a dying breed, YouTube, but it is up.
Oh no,
and about.
I tell you one thing about YouTube as well, and this is what, like, YouTube will take over everything, all the other streaming services, because it's the only place where people give content for free, like we are. We just put it on there, and millions of other people, and then they replay it, and then they add branding, as well as the fact that they have shows now. They obviously have live golf, and they have movies. Compare that to like Netflix, where they spend billions of dollars a year on the production of new shows. Mate, YouTube, they've got it made. It's just the beginning for YouTube.
Get around it. Now let's get stuck into the trade period. I almost called it trade week, the AFL trade week, but it's become trade period. I've been in the thick of it, Pat, doing some work on SEN or on AFL Trade Radio. In fact,
You've been Eddie everywhere. What are you not on?
I'm not at home very much. That much I can assure you, as I am constantly reminded by my wife when I am home. So when I'm home, she just reminds me I'm not home, and then that reminds me again why I wish I was back at work. But we've seen plenty happen. Like we've seen plenty happen. Last year was a flop. This year,
Shocker.
it hasn't yet manifested itself fully. But there's a lot to happen. We've seen a few deals made, but we've got Jackson and Dunkley and some big time players, Jason Horne-Francis, yet to come. Now I want to throw.
He could be the biggest out of the lot. I'm telling you. Like Horne-Francis, and I'm big on this when it comes to trading. The team that gets the player 90% of the time wins the deal because they get the known quantity.
Yes, they do.
So much of this is speculative because we're swapping our first and second rounds picks for Dunkley, for example. Well, you already know what you're getting with Dunkley. You're getting a premiership player, a best and fairest winner, someone who'll get it 30 times a game and kick you 15 to 25 goals for the year.
Mm-hmm.
Great clearance player, 190. You don't know what you're going to get with these drafted players. Now, there are the exceptions. And probably the most notable is Lockie Weller for pick 2. Pick 2 becomes Brayshaw.
Yes, Andrew
becomes MVP at 22 years of age. Freo are pretty happy with that deal.
Mm-hmm.
But I think 90% of the time, the team that gets the star wins the deal. The team that gets the player wins the deal. Like, there aren't that many occasions where it's an even result, where you get sort of two stars in and out. I mean, Carlton's a pretty good example. When Judd comes to Carlton, West Coast in return get Kennedy, one of their all-time great goal kickers, and they get Masson, a pick number 3, 200-game player, plays in a premiership. It's a win-win because Carlton get the biggest name in the game at the time.
Yeah.
But most of the time, we'll see the reviews at Wednesday afternoon, Thursday, and there'll be the winners and losers from the trade period. If for your team, do not worry about it. Don't care because you can't tell. It takes 12 months to work it out anyway.
Yeah, it's utter rubbish. The winners and losers, grading of teams, trade periods, utter rubbish.
Irrelevant. Totally irrelevant.
I want to ask you about a few. So you mentioned Horne-Francis. The story came out that he was seeking a move away. Now, Adelaide before...
He could be... Oh, seriously?
Yes.
I think we've forgotten because of the huge challenges that North have faced this year. The kid's a star. Port know it. Port are all over it. I wonder if... Do you think... And Rankin can clearly play, but I'm not sure he's Horne-Francis. Do you think they're thinking... Whew, at any point, and I'm sure they didn't because, once you commit, you commit.
Yeah.
But, they've got, pick 5 and they offered a first round next year. Could have that got it done? They were very aggressive in last year's trade period to try and get pick 1.
They were. They tried to get Horne-Francis effectively. They offered up 5, what would have been 6 this year, maybe shuffled, and then call it 10 or 15 next year. So they offered basically 3 picks inside 15, 2 of them inside top 10 to get him last year. So I think no doubt they would have had some second thoughts internally, the Crows, about should we go after him? But as you said, once you've committed to someone, you've committed to someone.
You've got to get the deal done.
Yeah, you're not, the next time you go to the trade period, if you've reneged, and that's something we've heard about Port Adelaide in regards to Jack Graham. There was a commitment there or an agreement that they were going to pursue something, and then Horne-Francis came up and they backed out. Now, a lot of this stuff is hearsay, and you don't know what's true and what's not. I was having a beer with a recruiter who had a few beers and was just reminding me how little we know when it comes to, and we in the media, I'm talking, know about all this stuff. So you just kindly reminded me of that. But a couple of others I want to ask you. So
coming from a recruiter, recruiters are the masters of deflection. You get a player, you pick a decent player, It's a recruiter. Picked it from a mile away. The player's no good. The recruiter's response, development's no good. It's the coaching. Had nothing to do with the recruiter.
Well, the best line from a recruiter is always, "We couldn't believe he was still there when it came to our pick. We honestly couldn't believe he was still there. We would have taken him 3 rounds earlier." That's their favourite line. Now, Tanner Bruhn becomes a Cat.
He does.
I presume you, being the great leader that you are, you would have touched base with the young man and welcomed him, I guess, at least via the phone, to the Cattery.
Yeah, good Geelong boy. Tanner actually throughout the AFL system. So every year there's an AFL academy and players come through this system, under 16s, under 18s. And essentially it is a mechanism to help develop really these 16 and 17, 18-year-olds. So when they get to the clubs, they're really ready to go. Tanner was a part of that team. And if you're local, depending on where you are around the country, if you're, Glenelg in South Australia, you go to Adelaide. You'll spend a couple of weeks then and learn the ropes. We had Tanner Bruhn a couple of years back, 3 years back, and you could see the talent was undeniable, and we're very excited to get him in the door.
Does now Ollie Henry? That seems a little less likely. What do you know about that one, Pat? I know you do fancy yourself as a bit of a mover and shaker, a list manager. You certainly failed when you brought me to the Cats, but
you can't win every trade, Josh. You can't win every trade.
Yeah, no, I think the Crows got the better of the round 5 future pick that they got for me. Don't know
with what we're forking out each month. Anyway, go on.
What do you know about Ollie Henry? That seems to be on shaky ground, that deal. I mean, it was reported that our man Andrew Mackey, the new list manager, was offering unders. Well, unders, according to the Sledgehammer. Now, I'll ask this question first because I want to get to Matt Rendell in a second. But what can you tell us about Ollie Henry, if anything?
Well, to be honest, only what I listen to you when I hear you dribble on in the afternoons on SEN.
Mornings.
Or carrying, and I'll give you a bit here, carrying Adam Cooney in the mornings. Does Coons ever read the run sheet?
Well, quite funny. So Coons does the mega trade. So I'm working with Coons in the morning. Now, this podcast will probably have come out after we've done the show, but just to paint the picture, Coons does the mega trade. It's a sold in element of the show where, sponsor has a little stinger and you've got to come up with a mega trade. And
he's like Alan out of The Hangover when there's all these different Pythagoras theorems going through his head.
It's designed to be, a bit funny and just a little bit cheeky. Now, on Friday, we worked together and I hosted and he was the expert, the trade expert. And we go from 9 to 11. We go from 9 till 11 at 10:45. Our intrepid and fearless producer, Sam Watson, is in the studio when we come back from our last break, just furiously typing away, trying to come up with a mega trade for Coons because Coons hadn't just got around to it yet. So that is what I'm dealing with the great man, the 2004 Brownlow. 2004? 2008? 2008 Brownlow medalist. That is what I'm dealing with.
Yeah, surprising no one.
All right, well, I want to ask you about a couple more before.
Sorry. Back to Henry. No, not really. I suspect the deal will get done. We're keen to acquire him. Prodigiously talented, brother of Jack. And for all the Collingwood supporters that were complaining about, you could just drive down the highway. Just drive up the highway each day. Well, they haven't driven down the highway for 25 years to play a game at KP, Josh. So I'd just back off the just drive down the highway each day.
You've just gotten 150,000 strong offside. Josh Dunkley didn't get done 2 years ago, and a deal looks unlikely to get done this year. The way things,
it gets done.
Do you reckon
it gets done? Because you're not going to.
Sure.
As much as you, as a club, your posture around, we'll send him to the preseason draft unless we get what we want. It still doesn't. If you do that, well done. You stick it up him for a year, for one trade period. But then you don't have the player and you don't have the picks.
Yeah.
You lose twice. So there's no wins on this, I don't think, in terms of if you're the Dogs. You work around and you get the deal done. But it's on Brisbane for it to be fair and equitable. Because if you look at the Taranto deal, picks 12 and 19, I think it was, Dunkley's every bit the player that Taranto is. Best and fairest winner and a premiership player. Plus, he's got a bit more size. I know Taranto kicks more goals. I do like big midfielders, kind of a stack of them because you need the fleet-footed.
Yep.
But he's big, Dunkley. So, I think if you're Brisbane, you're right in the window. So, yeah, absolutely. You do what you need to get it done. Maybe the Dogs are thinking, well, you know what, we'll just walk him in the preseason draft. We won't get anything in return. But at least one of our biggest challenges and threats over the next few years, the Brisbane Lions, won't acquire someone like Dunkley, who is going to immediately help them, and a midfield that is smaller than the vast majority. Dunkley is such a big weapon to add into that, particularly with Rayner being a bit injury prone. We've seen him come back off the knee, obviously hurt his ankle in the final. He can be that big midfielder, I think, but perhaps he still needs to just get it. Versus Dunkley comes in and he's ready to go in that spot.
Put your players union president cap on for a moment. I've got a couple of questions for you, or one question. We've got a first year, a second year, and a third year player all requesting to be traded, some in contract, some out of contract. But the fact of the matter is, Horne-Francis is a first year player, and then you've got Bruin and Henry, who are both in the early stages of their careers, second and third years, respectively, I believe. Do you think we are going to see, because this is upsetting the fans of the clubs that the guys are from and wanting to depart? Do you think this is going to make clubs want to push harder for a relaxed or a release on the consent of players trading? So being able to trade someone effectively without their consent.
It's not going to happen. The players don't.
Not going to happen soon, now, or ever.
Probably ever. Certainly. Yeah. No. From my view, as current president, not while I'm I'm involved, and I don't think while our current board they'll be the same, because your players don't earn enough to be shipped off to the other side of the country without their consent.
Well, can I put this to you then? What if it was, because the clubs and the people we've spoken to at Trade Radio, list managers and those types, so, the players have got probably the lion's share of leverage. And I think it's always been like that. It's like that in most sports, but at the moment, there's just this wrestle. What about if it was stipulated that if you're on north of, say, 500K and you had 2 or more years to go on your contract because you had some security and you're a highly paid player, could you see it happen then, or are you still steadfast on the fact that it won't happen?
It's the opposite, because what you'd have players that would have a no trade clause like we see in the NBA that you would sign. So typically the players that get that deal are the better players in the competition, because they have the leverage to say, well, I want X and a no trade clause. The only way you could potentially see it working is if there was and this is agreed upon sort of percentage of what's the percentage for it to be a trade clause, or without your consent clause. Yeah. So is that a 20% added extra? Is it 25?
Yeah.
But that's going to be for a player generally that's on south of 500. So for a player south of, say, the average wage, what is it, minimum? So sort of between, early threes, 350.
350, yeah.
Yeah. So say above average wage, say 400,000, a player that you're looking at, all right, we want to acquire this player, but we want the ability to trade him without his consent. The kicker is going to be the 25% extra. All of a sudden now we're paying him 500. It's not what you sort of want to do for those players that are that sort of below average range. You want the flexibility, but the only way you'd ever agree upon it is if you had a kicker of, and this was the player I'm talking about, well, yeah, I'll have the trade clause where you can move me, but it's going to cost you 25% extra per annum. It's
Yeah.
got to be worth my while.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I just thought I'd ask.
So no, I don't think it comes in. I mean, clubs will always complain until it's the player coming to their club, and then they're fine about it. So these things, all it does do, I think, is promote clubs to provide a really strong environment that's really enjoyable to be around. And I think that's a good thing for the competition. There should be competition for clubs to provide the best environment possible. Where I think it gets interesting is Kohler and Sydney-based teams. Now, Kohler was, this is the cost of living allowance, was rescinded. Can you remember what year that was, Josh? Was it after Buddy's?
Yeah, I believe it was after
10 mil, nine-year deal.
Kurt Tippett went up there, and
that's right.
And then Lance Franklin went, and the determination was that the Swans were holding on to the Kohler allowance and pooling it to spend it on one player versus using it across the whole group. I don't know where you're going to go, but my view is that from what I've heard from players and Sydney players in particular, that living up there is just stupid.
It's ridiculous.
And it needs to probably go back in the Kohler.
I saw that the Franklin acquisition is just brilliant management. Every team's going to do that. Not all have the foresight to be able to put their chips in. Absolutely, I think Kohler should be reintroduced. The market in Sydney is just insane.
Yeah, you just got to come to realestate.com and you'll have your the hairs on the back of your neck will just sizzle.
But that comes back to these third and fourth year contracts to retain players in that market, especially first round picks. You're paying, north of 350 per season. You don't have to do that in other states, Adelaide, certainly Geelong, Melbourne, depending on where you are.
Yep.
Gold Coast is starting to go sky high, but you're not getting it, Perth, far more affordable.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, let's move off the trade period. There is still a few days to go. I think deadline day or evening is 8:00 this Wednesday night. So we'll watch with interest. Let's move on to something we saw during the week, and it is not a laughing matter, but I guess when you're not involved, it is somewhat. And this is teammates who fight. Pat, we saw the video. Okay, it is a laughing matter.
It's 100%. It's a laughing matter.
We saw.
You look back on it and laugh.
The video released by TMZ were able to acquire the video at Golden State Warriors practice last week, where Jordan Poole and Draymond Green, championship winning teammates, of course, from last season. We're talking trash at practice in the NBA, which happens every single day. Green was clearly getting in the face of Jordan Poole. If you haven't seen it, it's probably online somewhere.
Jordan Poole kept apparently talking about how he's going to get paid in his next contract, and he was talking about the size of the pool that he was going to install.
So Draymond walked over and got on his face, and Jordan Poole pushed him, and then Draymond has just given him a fair dinkum right hand, which is basically well, it would have dropped him, I guess, except he sort of fell back onto the fence or onto the wall at the practice court. It was pretty nasty, Pat.
It wasn't great. Do you see an NBA where do you see a Golden State Warriors where those two continue to play with each other?
Yeah, absolutely, I do. In fact, I'm staggered if they don't.
I agree.
Although I think Draymond will be missing the first 10, 15, probably 20 games.
No, he won't.
Well, I wouldn't be so sure about that. The fact that the video has come out.
It's on the club. So the club decides. That's only hurting the team.
No, Adam Silver can definitely step in on that. Once the video comes out, we saw this happen with, I think it was Kareem Hunt back when he was playing for Kansas City. The video came. Sorry, it was actually Ray Rice. I want to get it right because I don't want to mention a player who actually didn't get in trouble for physically harming their partner. But the video came out of Ray Rice in an elevator in Vegas, and he was punching and kicking his partner. as soon as the video
That's
came
domestic violence, though. Do you think that,
out,
that
I
you
know
can't?
that, but there were other players who were in the same situation who either got off or basically got off scot-free. But once the video came out of a player doing this same thing, it just changed everything. And people having seen Draymond Green throw that right hand, that changes it for me. I think he'll get suspended I think he'll get 10 games.
Well, I think 10's still significant. Like that's closing in on 10% of the season.
Well, you can't do that, Pat.
Oh. No, you can't. What was worse? Satana O'Halfman on, was it Cameron Cloak? I think it was.
Was it Cameron Cloak? Yeah.
He not only did he punch him, he kicked him after. Yeah, kicked him in the butt.
Kicked him in the knackers or the rear end after he'd dispatched of him. Yeah, it was that one was ugly. Satanta.
Sydney Stack and Callum Jones a couple of years back in the hub. Well, only like they were out when they shouldn't have been out, and they got into a fight. It wasn't the smartest 24 hours.
Yeah, well, they were at a venue that they shouldn't have been at. Particularly,
that's the third one. The third issue with it.
Particularly considering we were locked in hubs. What about well, we had the famous one this year. We had the what was the name of the restaurant? The Entre, what was it? The milkshakes, Milkshake Man,
Milkshake,
and Stevie May. Some people blame that as the demise, the downfall of the D's this year. What was the name? Entrecôte. Is that the name of it?
Oh, I'm not sure, to be honest.
I reckon people go there to get photos, and they stand there with photos, and they just, you stand with a boxer and you have your gloves up just because it was the side of Milkshake versus May, the punch on.
You're making that up. They don't do that.
Of course they don't do that. What about the? I don't know if you saw at the World Championships recently, the female basketball World Championships in Sydney. So there was a French player being interviewed. And then all of a sudden, so there was a single reporter, and she was standing there with the camera. And then all of a sudden, there's a loud ruckus, and the Marley teammates are punching on.
They're going nuts.
They're just hacking at each other. They're not really throwing punches, but they're trying to. So they were fighting at the end of a game at a press conference. So it's not something that's new, Pat, but it's not something. I mean,
have you ever gotten in a fight with a teammate?
I got
Tarls. Surely you've smacked Tarls.
No.
Or he smacked you.
No, I actually I got kicked off. Brenton Sanderson kicked me off the training track. You would have been there. Yeah, he Matthew Yench, a good fella, but a crazy little character.
Yes, I remember this. I remember this now.
He was just scragging me at training. I don't even know if he really did that much, to be honest. And I just sort of, lashed out and I think I actually whacked him in the old gonads, which is what dropped him. But it looked like I whacked him off the ball
on purpose.
And Sano just saw him go down and sent me straight off the ground, which was fine because we had about 8Ks to go at the pre-season session. So
he had probably the funniest line that I've ever heard in footy. The biggest travesty in football is that I don't get to mark my own kick.
Oh, Jesus. Well, I
can't remember who he said it to, but
he's playing for the Humboldt Magpies now, so he probably is good enough to go and mark his own kicks.
No, he should have had a longer career than what he did, man. He was a very good player.
Absolutely, he should have played at least double the amount. I don't know how many games he played, but he should have played north of 150. Hey, did you hear about? I was interested because I thought this would come up when I read it. I haven't listened to it, but it sounded familiar. So everyone's favourite American Australian, Mason Cox, was on the Adam and Simon show. Not a show I'm super familiar with, but I read the transcripts and I thought, geez, that sounds familiar. The quote was, they were talking about the qualify. It was listed as the prelim final. It was actually the qualifying final, and he was speaking on the show about the fact that he was engaging in a little bit of trash talk with a Geelong player before the game.
False. No Geelong players get into any sort of verbal altercations with
Pat,
opposition.
Pat, I was there. I know you were there, and I'm not sure Goose, but I was there. Now, the quote was from Maso. He just kind of looked at me, but in my head, I thought, I've got him. Now, I know who he's talking about, and he didn't have him at all.
I don't think he had him, but I think perhaps that headline might have been taken out of context because it is actually genuinely a great chat. It's a lot of fun, but I think the headline incites a little bit of I think it's incited a bit of abuse to poor old Mason.
It does its job.
Well, exactly. It's clicks.
You and I both know who the player was. We're not outing the player. We're just going to go along with anonymity.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, disappointing. All right, let's move on to Formula One. The Japanese
Formula
GP has just been raced.
Yeah, Max. Pouring
rain. That's been the
Lando Norris was filthy that he was racing.
Well, they didn't race for ages. Now, in the end, Max Verstappen won and has actually claimed the world championship with heaps of races to go. So congrats to Max, back-to-back, two-time world champ. But Daniel Ricciardo, I think a day or two ago, came out and said, the quote is, I don't think I'll be on the Formula One grid next year. So he's NASCAR, a year off, IndyCar, V8s, who knows what Danny Rick's going to do next year. But he's even conceded that he probably won't be on the grid next year. Now we know the young Aussie Oscar Piastri will be actually taking Daniel's seat.
Yeah, he knifed him. Yep.
Knifed him.
But
Danny Rick won't be there and Max is a champ. So there's plenty happening in the world of F1.
Yeah, that's flat. It's flattening. It's flattening for Netflix as well, Drive to Survive, because he's just about the only driver with any sort of personality.
Yeah.
If you're the V8s, and the V8s gets a little lost, I think, in terms of how big it is.
Jordan.
It is enormous.
And it's great.
And it is great. What are you rolling out in terms of a checkbook to make sure that Daniel Ricciardo looks nowhere else other than the V8s? Because he would put the V8s front and center to so many that actually don't follow the V8s. And that's the secret to growing market share, because those that love it. They're tuning in no matter what. But what you want is a greater market share of audience that aren't necessarily into it. If you got Daniel Ricciardo, that is a game changer.
Agreed. I think I don't know whether you'd get him for the whole season because
that's all right.
I think you could get him though. I think where you could get him, Pat. So Bathurst was on today, and I watched a fair bit of it. Not all of it. 161 laps, my God. But I watched a little bit of it, and they have the driver swaps. So they have two drivers. So the races, I think they call them the enduros or the endurance races, where you bring in another driver. I think they would suit him. I think 100. I think so. I think, people who love the V8s and watch Bathurst closer than you and I would know, but I think the main driver sort of does about 100 laps and the other driver does 60 laps. So that would be great because you could bring him in, he could do a lot of promotional work for the sport, and then he could do a bit of driving. And I'm sure, if Formula One car and a V8 supercar is a fair bit different, but they both go fast. So sure,
he'd be like John Gerard.
Yeah, we're going to get back to Bathurst
because you're giving me nothing.
There was some. Well, who's John Gerard?
Talladega Nights.
I haven't seen it, mate.
Ricky. Are you serious? Will Farrell?
I don't know.
Ricky Bobby.
If
you ain't first, you're last.
You are about to learn, as a father of three, like I am and have been for nearly 2 years. There are no time for movies. So
yes, there are, mate. From now, so it's 9 o'clock. Now till 3, because I'm awake the whole time because she ain't snoozing.
Well,
nothing. Not a peep.
She's
nocturnal, mate. She's a freaking koala.
Trade her in for a different one.
Not sure we'll be sending it back to where I got it from, Josh.
Just go back to the hospital and swap her over. Speaking of Bathurst, and as I said, we're going to get to it a bit later. Did you see the conditions that they had to deal with? There was stuff happening all over the place. Hopefully we can get Rowan to just chuck a few little videos and stills and stuff. There were cars sliding all over the place. I didn't think they would actually get it run.
Global warming. It's global warming. The La Nina, the third La Nina that we've had this year.
Not you as well. I've got to put up with this 3 till 6 every Monday to Friday with Andy Marr. But
who was the politician that said this is a one in every, 3,000 year occurrence, and it was the second one in 6 weeks?
I don't know.
Who was that?
I make it my point of my life to ignore being anything that comes out of a politician's mouth. Actually, whilst we're on it,
I think they're warm and cuddly. Didn't you listen to Peter Dutton today?
We're way
warm
off.
and cuddly.
We're way off topic. But the worst job in the world is to be part of the opposition, because you don't even get to have an opinion. You just have to wait to hear someone else's opinion and just take the opposite side.
Go the other way.
Just go the opposite. So even if you love something, looks like I got to pick the other side. Worst job ever. Let's go to actually one more thing before we move on to our favourite segments: Mirror on the Media, 3 votes, and Joe the Goose of the Week. Yeah. We're not quite there yet. Horse racing, and we love. Well, I certainly do. You're just getting there. Now, I went to Caulfield on Saturday for the Caulfield Guineas Day, and Golden Mile won the race, the 3-year-old colt. So these are all 3-year-olds, almost all colts, and whoever wins the race, if the horse is bred, richly bred or regally bred, the horse can go from worth $500 to $1 million to $10, $15, $20 million. We've seen it with Merchant Navy, who was sold for $27 million. We saw it with Super Seth 3 years ago, who was sold for $16 million to Waikato Stud. Now, a few friends of ours, Pat, Paul Connors, agent to the Stars, he had a small share in Elliptical, who got beaten in the Guineas by that much. And
how much was that inch worth?
One, probably 10, 12, $14 million.
Yay,
and it's an interesting conversation because it literally was an inch. And the reality is, so the race was over 1,600 metres. At the 1,620 metre mark, Elliptical, Paul's horse, Luke Dalhouse has a share in him, Aaron Norton, Greg Swan, Lockie Hunter. He was in front. But because on that post...
He just wasn't going anywhere, was he? He's stationary, just putting him in, just not going anywhere.
Cross trainer. Golden Mile was in front on the post and Elliptical was an inch behind him. One of those horses becomes 10, 15, $20 million prospect. And the other one's just got to turn up and win another race somewhere else and solidify his move to stud. So fine margins for stupidly enormous results. And our little buddy, Luke Dalhouse, has almost did it again. So 3 years ago, he had a share in Super Seth, who you
did
put,
right after that.
Put in your 2, 3, 4, 5 grand, whatever it is, for a 1% share, and they sold him for 16 million. So do the math on that. So shout out to Paul Connors. I actually rang the great man this morning, Sunday morning, just for a little mental health welfare check, because that's $100,000 decision or $100,000 inch. So everyone who was involved in Elliptical, I feel you. Apparently they're going to cough up 200,000, Pat. 200,000 to go in the Cox Plate. So stay tuned for that. Let's go to Mirror on the Media, Pat, and you've got this one. Take it away.
Yeah, I do. And I'm going to play you a little bit of audio first, courtesy of Triple M. This is Tommy Brown clearing the air.
Now, Asava Radical.
I want to know. Because there's some talk about Mitch and Tom Brown.
Tom Brown.
Who's the best one there? Who's the number one,
Alpha
number
male.
2? Alpha male. So, Coldy, what's going on there? Are you talking to Tom?
I've been reading James Brayshaw's textbook, trying to puff the chest out around the office.
Yeah.
And trying to impose myself.
Good.
No, we're very, it's very harmonious in here in the 7 newsroom. We get along like a house on fire. And we've been doing our daily trade videos, just trying to out information each other and going swimmingly.
Not buying it, Josh. Not buying it for an instant. Apparently, there is an internal rivalry between Channel 7's Mitch Cleary and Channel 7's Tom Brown.
Wow.
Around the stories around trade week and who can break them the fastest. Now, I think there's nothing wrong with a little bit of internal rivalry, but I do find it a little bit odd when they're both standing sort of side by side at the desk when, it's thrown to trade news. I feel like they should be facing each other, like a face-off.
Standoff.
And then one of them goes with something, and then the other either it's like a rebuttal. No, that's not happening because North are not happy with that pick, and then it's back and forward rather than sort of, it looks a bit presenterish each, Joshua.
Yeah, well, my favourite thing is when Tim Watson reads the sports news and throws to Tom or Mitch. My favourite thing is, and it's more so Tom Brown versus doing it to Mitch than the other way around. So Mitch might go first and say, it's believed Brodie Grundy, Melbourne are willing to pay him $700,000. That means Collingwood are going to have to pay $300,000. Then he throws it to Tom Brown, and Tom Brown will often say, well, sources say apparently it's not $300,000, it's closer to $250,000, directly conflicting his old mate Mitch Cleary. So it's a little battle to be watched. I know that Hutchie and Damo are following it on their podcast, but it's starting to become a little more obvious to the untrained ear that these two are going at it. So we'll follow this one with interest.
Are you seeing this? You obviously do plenty of work at SEN. Do you see any internal rivalry with the news breakers around who's breaking what through the Mc offices? Because obviously there's McDonald's cafe in there at SEN.
Not actually the newsbreakers, the SEN track boys. Now SEN track's new,
yes,
newish. The power struggle within SEN track. We've got a few boys on the come up, few boys looking to get famous.
Yeah,
you've got the has-beens like Campbell Brown and myself who just don't really care and just want to go in there and get out of the road and do our thing. But you've just got to.
Brownie looks like he's been up all night reading the form guide, and then he's sitting there with like, it's like you can just yep, that one didn't obviously go to plan. This guy's running his hands through the hair, and he's like.
Or the next time you see some of the SEN track socials, just have a look at the way everyone's dressed, and you'll see little tags. He's got his little Tarakash t-shirt on. He doesn't care. I dress pretty ordinarily, to be honest.
Rubbish, Josh. Absolute rubbish with what you're rolling with.
Brownie's not much better. And then you'll just see a few guys who are, little Ralph Lauren shirts and little knits. Just I'm not going to name names, but there's
okay,
a nice little power struggle at SEN track, Pat.
I like it. Well, we don't mind the power struggle. Internal rivalry is good, but this week's Mirror on the Media is none other than our own Channel 7's own Mitch Cleary and Tom Brown. So, boys, we're keeping an eye on both of you. Build each other up. Don't bring each other down. We're a team.
We are. Let's go to 3 votes, and I think she's the first-time recipient of not back-to-back, sorry, 2-time award winner of the 3 votes here, and that is Sam Kerr, the Australian footballing superstar. Now, you saw some good research by you, Pat. Sam Kerr this is her year.
Yeah, reel it off.
Her year in review. So she's the league winner, the Golden Boot winner, the FIFA 23 cover athlete, the Club Player of the Year, the Barclays Player of the Year, the PFA Player of the Year, the Football Writers Association Player of the Year, and the Balloon d'Or nominee as well.
It will be an absolute farce if she doesn't win that either.
Well, I think she got rorted. Was it last?
100%. Yeah, because it's got nothing to do with how good you are.
Well, it'd be handy if it did.
She's nearly lost it there.
Jesus Christ. And also...
cough. Matty Rendell's cough button.
I've got a new nickname for him too. You know how we call Lloydie the Velvet Sledgehammer?
No, we don't call Lloydie that. We call Lloydie Lists Lloydie.
Well, yeah, I mean, we call him, but we call him the Velvet Sledgehammer. I just call Matt Rendell the Spiky Sledgehammer because he's not trying to.
He's not massaging it in.
Wind water down anything. He's just coming at you. So Lloydie's wrapped his sledgehammer in velvet. Rendell's wrapped his with iron spikes to make the blow even harder.
Is Is Matt Rendell the best thing to I'm serious, the best thing to happen to trade radio? Like, if we talk best performers throughout trade radio, I tune into Matt every afternoon. I'm entertained.
Yeah, he's pretty honest. He doesn't.
I want entertainment. I don't want fluff on the sides. I want hard and fun. It doesn't necessarily isn't always true, but I'm enjoying it. I love it.
Where would you have me in terms of the lightweights involved in trade radio?
Well, you're above Coons.
If one is Coons and 10 is Rendell, where do I sit?
You're above Coons. I'm
Hopefully this doesn't get back to the great man. I've got to work with him a couple of times this week. We just want to give a standing ovation. No 3 votes, not quite. We couldn't surpass Sam Kerr. But Lauren Jackson has retired again.
And this is selfish because this is selfish, Josh.
Well, she should keep playing. That's why it's selfish.
Exactly right. So we are being robbed as an Australian public, the fact we don't get to see more of her.
30 points and 7 boards on the way out. Retired or told her teammates a few hours before the game, went out, dropped 30, and the Opals won bronze. It shouldn't be understated what she did, because the Opals were legless in the Tokyo Olympics. Like they were terrible. Yep. They were terrible.
Well, they missed Liz Cambage despite the ructions that she caused off the court. She's a very potent player on it.
Terrible campaign, and for them to pick themselves up and win bronze on the back of LJ dropping 30.
Amazing.
What a performance. Joe the Goose of the week, and then we will get out of here. The Bathurst Booze Hounds, Pat. I was working on SEN on Friday, and we had someone, we're trying to get in contact with someone who was at Bathurst because it was absolutely hammering down with rain, and we thought, this is not going to happen. Like, they're going to have to call it off. So we said, if you're at Bathurst or if you know someone at Bathurst, tell them to get in touch with us. And we had I think an amateur journalist who was at Bathurst rang us up and said, I think we'll get through it. It's pretty wet, blah, blah, blah. But he said, everyone up here is a little grumpy. Now, I don't think it's a new rule, but every time they turn up, they remember. The locals are not happy. So it's a 4-day event, I think. 1 slab per person per day. They are not happy. And
one slab.
So 24 stubbies per 24 hours per day per person. Not enough.
Josh, I'm going to have to go here because my daughter is she's not happy.
Oh, jeepers creepers. Well, let's
come here, Flick.
Oh, is that Flick?
Come in here, Flicky, babe.
Hang on, I thought I thought it would have been Winifred.
Come in here, darling. Good Lord. You keep talking for 1 second.
Are you coming back, or he's just ducked off to deal with the 3-year-old? 9:15 at night. Not sure why she's awake. While we wait for Pat, if he comes back, as I said, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Field with JJ in Danger, the socials, the webpage. He's back. And make sure...
Who would have kids, Josh? Who would have children?
Yeah, well, I mean, you should have thought of that. The other podcasts are flying. Harnessed, Horsepower, the NFL, all absolutely hammering. And as we said, Pat, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Field with JJ in Danger. Get your hands on a signed Premiership Cats jumper. If you're listening to this, you can't see the jumper, but I'm holding it up. Get involved, Pat. We're out of here.
Beautiful work, Josh.